The Krillian colony on Theta 7 had been thriving for 3 standard cycles, its crystalline domes gleaming against the perpetual gray skies of the ice moon. The aliens had mastered climate control, genetic optimization, and resource distribution with mathematical precision. They looked down upon primitive survival methods with the kind of disdain reserved for obsolete technology. Kievan was an anomaly they tolerated but never understood. The human veteran lived in a cave system approximately 8 kilometers from the colony's eastern perimeter. The Krillians had offered him standard housing twice, citizenship benefits 3 times, and technological integration more times than their administrative AI could count. Each time, Kievan had declined with the same 2 words: "I'm good." Jennifer, the colony's xenobiological liaison, had made it her personal mission to understand the strange human. Her chitinous exoskeleton clicked softly as she approached his cave entrance for the 47th time, her compound eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through ice formations. "Kievan," she called out, her translator rendering her native harmonics into flat English. "The temperature is dropping. Meteorological analysis predicts a minor weather event. Perhaps now you will reconsider climate-controlled accommodation." The human emerged from the shadows, his weathered face creased with what Jennifer had learned to recognize as amusement. At 63 standard years, Kievan moved with the efficiency of someone who had learned to conserve energy in hostile environments. His gray hair was tied back, and his eyes held the peculiar alertness Jennifer associated with Earth predators. "Minor weather event," Kievan repeated, glancing at the darkening sky. "That what your computer's calling it. Atmospheric pressure dropping by 0.73%, wind speeds increasing to 40 kilometers per hour, precipitation probability at 92%, well within acceptable parameters." Jennifer's mandibles twitched with confidence. "Our domes will automatically compensate." Kievan nodded slowly, but his eyes told a different story. "You ever spend a winter in the Carpathian Mountains, Jennifer?" "I have not visited Earth." "Didn't think so." He turned back toward his cave. "You might want to double-check those sensors of yours. Sky's got that look." Jennifer reported the conversation to the colony's governing council that evening. They responded with the Krillian equivalent of laughter, a series of harmonic pulses that translated poorly into human languages. "The primitive human thinks he can read weather patterns better than our orbital satellites," Council Member Thex 9 chimed. "This is why they needed our intervention to establish proper civilization on this moon." But Kievan had been right about the sky. The blizzard hit 36 hours later with a fury that shattered every meteorological model the Krillians had constructed. What their instruments had classified as a minor weather event transformed into a planetary catastrophe. Wind speeds exceeded 200 kilometers per hour. The temperature plummeted to -70 degrees Celsius. Snow fell so thick that visibility dropped to 0 within minutes. The Krillian domes, designed for Theta 7's typical weather patterns, began to fail on day 2. Climate control systems, taxed beyond their rated capacity, started shutting down in cascading failures. The crystalline structures, optimized for aesthetic beauty and standard conditions, developed stress fractures under the relentless assault of ice and wind. Emergency power reserves depleted faster than the engineers had calculated possible. By day 3, the colony faced extinction. Jennifer huddled with 47 other Krillians in Dome 7, one of the few structures still maintaining partial environmental integrity. Their exoskeletons, evolved on a warm, humid homeworld, provided no protection against the savage cold seeping through the failing barriers. Metabolic function slowed. Thinking became difficult. "We should have listened," she whispered, her translator barely functioning in the cold. The human knew. Council Member Thex 9, his normally vibrant carapace dulled to gray, could barely generate a response. Around them, Krillians entered torpor, their bodies shutting down to conserve energy they no longer possessed. On day 4, when all hope seemed lost, Jennifer's failing vision detected movement outside the dome. A figure, wrapped in what appeared to be animal hides and primitive insulation, moved through the blizzard with impossible confidence. She recognized the gate. Kevin had come. The human forced open the emergency airlock, bringing with him a blast of Arctic wind and something else: purpose. He carried a pack that looked ancient, military surplus from some forgotten Earth conflict. "Right," he said, his breath visible in the frigid air. "Let's get you folks somewhere that'll keep you alive." Jennifer tried to speak, but her translator had frozen solid. Kevin seemed to understand anyway. "Save your energy. I've got a route marked. Cave system stays between -10 and -15, even in this mess. Geothermal vents keep it livable if you know what you're doing." What followed was a forced march that would have killed them all if not for Kevin's relentless efficiency. He carried the weakest Krillians, 2 at a time, across 8 kilometers of howling death. He used emergency flares to mark the path, techniques he'd learned in some half-forgotten winter war. He rotated the stronger survivors to help the weaker ones, maximizing the group's survival probability through sheer tactical experience. It took him 16 hours to evacuate all 48 Krillians from Dome 7. He repeated the process for 3 other failing domes, working without rest, moving like a machine programmed for a single function: survival. By day 5, 163 Krillians crowded into Kevin's cave system, a space that should have housed maybe 20 comfortably. But they were alive. The veteran had prepared for this, Jennifer realized. The cave wasn't just a dwelling, it was a fortress against winter. He had stockpiled emergency rations, water purification systems that required no power, thermal blankets manufactured from local materials, and medical supplies carefully organized in waterproof containers. "Kosovo, 2008, Kevin explained as he distributed warming packs to the most hypothermic Krillians. "Got trapped in the mountains for 11 days. Power grid went down. Supply lines cut. Had to keep 47 civilians alive in a village with no infrastructure." He moved through the caves with the precision of a surgeon treating frostbite, adjusting body positions to maximize heat retention, rationing supplies with mathematical accuracy that would have impressed the Krillian engineers if they hadn't been semi-conscious. Afghanistan, 2011. Learn to read weather patterns the old way. Computers are great until they're not. Then you better know how to survive on instinct and experience. Jennifer watched him work through the thermal haze of her recovering vision. This human, whom they had mocked as primitive, was saving them all with skills they had deemed obsolete. Day 6 brought the storm's peak. Wind speeds hit 250 kilometers per hour. The temperature dropped to -85. In the colony, every dome had failed. The Krillians in the caves would have been corpses if they had remained in their superior technology. Kevin rationed the heat, the food, the water. He kept them organized, kept them calm, kept them breathing. He told stories from his military service, not to boast, but to distract them from the howling death outside. He described winters in places called Siberia and Alaska, storms that made Theta 7 seem almost gentle by comparison. "The thing about winter," he said on day 7, as the storm finally began to weaken, "is that it doesn't care about your technology or your theories. It just is. You either respect it and prepare or you die. Simple as that." The blizzard ended on day 8, as abruptly as it had begun. When the survivors emerged from the caves, they found their colony in ruins. The beautiful crystalline domes had shattered. Climate control systems lay frozen and broken. 3 years of careful construction had been reduced to glittering debris across the ice. But 163 Krillians had survived because a human veteran had understood what their computers could not: that nature demands respect, and survival requires more than mathematical models. Jennifer stood beside Kevin at the cave entrance, looking out at the devastation. Her translator had finally recovered enough to function. "We mocked you," she said simply. "We thought ourselves superior." Kevin shrugged, the gesture containing no judgment, no triumph. "You folks are smart. You'll rebuild better this time. You'll remember that Theta 7 isn't your homeworld, and what works there won't necessarily work here. Will you help us?" The veteran considered the question, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'll help, but we're doing it my way this time. Redundant systems, emergency protocols, respect for the environment, and everyone learns winter survival skills. No exceptions." Council Member Thex 9, his carapace slowly regaining color in the weak sunlight, approached them both. His translator crackled as he spoke. "We owe you our lives, Kevin. We offer you anything within our power to grant." The human smiled, that weathered face creasing with genuine warmth. "Tell you what I want. Stop calling traditional survival skills primitive. They're tested, they work, and maybe train some of your people in them, because the next storm won't care how advanced your technology is." The Krillians rebuilt their colony over the following cycles, but it looked different now. Alongside the crystalline domes, they constructed reinforced emergency shelters using principles Kevin taught them. They installed redundant heating systems that could function without computer control. They studied human military survival manuals with the same intensity they had once reserved for quantum physics. And in the center of the new colony, they erected a monument, a simple stone marker with words in both Krillian and English. "Technology serves survival, never the reverse." Beneath it, a second inscription, dedicated to Kevin, who taught us that wisdom has no expiration date. The veteran still lived in his cave, though now it was by choice rather than isolation. The Krillians visited regularly, learning, listening, preparing. They had learned the hardest lesson a technological civilization could face, that intelligence without wisdom is just sophisticated ignorance, and that sometimes the most advanced being in the room is the one who remembers how to survive when everything else fails. Jennifer visited most often, her 47th visit having become a daily ritual. On a clear afternoon, she asked the question that had troubled her since the blizzard. "How did you know, Kevin? How did you know the storm would be so severe when our instruments said otherwise?" The human looked up at the sky, that same alertness in his eyes. "I didn't know for certain, but I'd seen that color in the clouds before, felt that pressure drop, smelled that particular cold. 63 years of living teaches you to trust your instincts. Your machines are smart, Jennifer, but they've only been here 3 cycles. I may be just one human, but my species has been reading weather and surviving winters for 200,000 years. That kind of knowledge runs deep." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "Plus, my bad knee always aches before a real storm hits. Better than any barometer." Jennifer's mandibles clicked in the Krillian expression of profound understanding. She had learned, as had all her people, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons or their mathematics. It was their relentless, stubborn refusal to die, honed over millennia of surviving on a planet that had tried everything to kill them. And sometimes, that was worth more than all the computational power in the galaxy.